Welcome to History's Darkest Questions. Today's video is The Unseen Killer, the Spanish Influenza's Forgotten Victims, the 1918 pandemic. In 1918, an unseen killer swept across the globe, leaving in its wake a staggering death toll and a level of devastation unprecedented in modern history. The Spanish influenza, often overshadowed by the horrors of the First World War, killed more people than the war itself. The virus did not discriminate. It infected and killed healthy young adults with terrifying efficiency, creating a wave of panic and suffering that left no corner of the world untouched. Hospitals were overwhelmed, medical staff were underprepared, and communities were brought to their knees by this invisible enemy. Governments, already stretched thin by the rigors of war, were ill-equipped to handle this new crisis. Public health systems collapsed under the strain, and in many places, the very fabric of society began to unravel. Families were torn apart as loved ones succumbed to the virus in mere hours, and the dead often lay unburied for days. Mass graves became a disturbing common sight, and funeral homes ran out of coffins as the death toll rose to astronomical levels. The sheer speed and lethality of the Spanish flu provoked fear and hysteria, exacerbated by a lack of accurate information and rampant rumors. Many suffered not just from the disease itself, but from the deep-seated fear of contagion. Churches, schools, and theaters closed their doors, quarantines were imposed, and citizens were urged to wear masks in public, often resulting in widespread paranoia and social isolation. The sight of masked faces became the new normal, and the air of dread was palpable. Medical professionals lacking modern antibiotics or vaccines resorted to desperate measures, such as using gauze masks and recommending fresh air in an attempt to combat the virus, with limited success. The psychological toll was immense. Children lost parents, rendering them orphans overnight, and communities became ghost towns devoid of the laughter and life they once knew. Psychological disorders spiked among the survivors who found themselves grappling with PTSD and depression. The experience deepened social inequalities as the impoverished were more exposed to the deadly conditions, lacking access to even basic medical care. Minority communities, living in crowded and unsanitary conditions, were disproportionately affected, compounding existing social tensions and fueling a climate of blame and resentment. The Spanish flu ultimately infected 1/3 of the world's population, claiming at least 50 million lives, possibly even more. The exact death toll remains uncertain due to underreporting and inconsistent records, but its impact was felt universally. Victims often died from secondary bacterial infections, such as pneumonia, after their bodies were weakened by the flu. The virus caused hemorrhages and turned skin blue, symptoms that were as gruesome to witness as they were horrific to suffer through. Entire families perished within days, and many survivors were left with haunting memories of those they could not save. The aftershocks of this pandemic were felt for years as economies struggled to recover and governments sought to rebuild shattered infrastructures. Despite its magnitude, the Spanish influenza faded from public consciousness, overshadowed by the end of World War I and the return to normalcy that followed. Few monuments or memorials exist to honor its victims, and its lessons were only piecemeal learned and applied to future pandemics. It serves as a grim reminder of the fragility of human societies in the face of nature's wrath and the devastating power of underestimated threats. The Spanish influenza, one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, reminds us not only of the capacity for viruses to cripple nations, but also of the resilience and capacity to endure overwhelming suffering. It is a cautionary tale that resonates today, urging vigilance, preparedness, and above all, the recognition of the unsung and often forgotten sacrifices made by millions forced to confront an invisible, relentless killer.